There were 55,000 people in that stadium, and when Jimin walked to the center of the stage and the opening notes of a very specific song began to play, every single one of them knew what was coming. They had been waiting for it. Some of them had been waiting for 4 years. Some of them had traveled from the other side of the world specifically for this moment. Some of them were from Busan, the city where Jimin was born, the city where this song was written about, the city that had spent the entire previous week turning its streets and subway stations and buses and billboard screens into what fans had started calling Jimin Road. And when he opened his mouth and said the words, the sound that came back at him from 55,000 people was not the sound of a crowd reacting to a performer. It was the sound of a city welcoming one of its own back home. What happened in the next 4 minutes on that stage on June 12, 2026 is not something that can be fully described in an article or a recap, but this video is going to try, and by the end of it, you will understand why NBC News, Korea Herald, and every major outlet that covered the concert called it the most emotionally charged moment of the entire Arirang World Tour. This channel is for the fans who understand that the difference between a concert moment and a historic moment is not the size of the stage or the production budget or how many countries are watching the live stream. It is whether the thing that happens on that stage is true, whether the person standing on it is genuinely where they are supposed to be, saying something they actually mean to people who have genuinely been waiting for it. By that measure, what happened on June 12th in Busan Asiad Main Stadium is in a category of its own. June 12, 2026, Busan Asiad Main Stadium, the first night of a 2-night run that marks BTS's return to this specific venue, the same stadium where they last stood together before 3 years of mandatory military service separated them from the stage and from each other. The preparations surrounding this concert have been documented elsewhere in detail. The Jimin Road streetlight banners, the Ride with Jimin bus that began operations the previous day, the 26 PDP advertisements across 4 transfer stations on Busan Metro Line 3, the wall wrapping at Jeongha Bundongjong Station, the digital billboard at Busan International Finance Center running more than 100 times per day, the cafe run by Jimin's father, where fans had been lining up since the beginning of the week, the taxi driver who smiled at the mention of the cafe and said, "Ah, Jimin's place, I know the father." 100,000 visitors from around the world, according to city projections, had come to Busan for this weekend. The city's tourism policy director had said, "We are turning the entire city into a festival." And into all of that, into a city that had spent weeks preparing to receive him, Jimin walked onto a stage on the night of June 12th and did something that no amount of preparation could have scripted. He came home. The concert opened the way Arirang World Tour concerts have opened since Goyang in April, with Hooligan, the track that Billboard described as the performance that shrouded in fog and intense red lighting. The Bangtan Boys hit every note while executing intricate choreography. The production scale is extraordinary, the staging is extraordinary, and in every city from Tampa to Mexico City to Stanford to Las Vegas, the crowds have responded to it with the kind of energy that tells you a 65,000 or 50,000 person stadium can produce. But Busan is not like those stadiums, and the crowd in Busan was not like those crowds. Longtime concertgoers who have attended BTS shows across multiple tours reported that the ambient energy in Busan Asiad Main Stadium before the show started was different in quality from any show they had attended. Quieter in certain ways, more tense, the specific kind of tension that exists not because something might go wrong, but because something deeply right is about to happen and you are not entirely sure you are prepared for it. That tension built across the first section of the set list, through the new Arirang material, through the older catalog, through the interactions between members that have always been one of the things that separates BTS concerts from every other production at this scale. And then, somewhere in the middle of the show, the opening notes of Muse City began to play. For anyone who needs context, Muse City is a BTS song released in 2015 on the album The Most Beautiful Moment in Life, Part 2. It is explicitly and intentionally a song about Busan. The lyrics are partly written in Busan dialect, the distinctive regional speech that marks someone as specifically from that city in a way that standard Korean cannot replicate. The song references Busan landmarks. It references the feeling of having come from somewhere specific and carrying that place with you regardless of how far you travel or how much you change. It is, for Jimin, the most personal song in BTS's catalog. Not the one with the most emotional lyrics about his individual experience, but the one that is most directly about the specific coordinates of his existence, the city that formed him before any stage existed, the city he left to become something extraordinary, the city he has carried in his dialect and his loyalty to its educational institutions, and his father's cafe that has become a destination for fans from around the world. When the opening notes played on June 12th in Busan Asiad Main Stadium, the crowd recognized them immediately. The reaction was not the reaction of an audience hearing a familiar song. It was the reaction of 55,000 people who understood exactly what was about to happen and were already overwhelmed before a single word was sung. And then Jimin walked to the front of the stage and he said 4 words: "Welcome to my city." Just that, followed immediately by "Let's go." 6 words total. No elaborate speech, no prepared remarks, no emotional preamble about what it means to be back. Just the same words he said in the same stadium in October 2022, in a moment that fans have been referencing ever since as one of the defining images of that entire evening. 6 words that, the last time they were spoken here, carried a different weight, the weight of someone who was about to disappear from this stage for an unknown amount of time, saying goodbye to the city that made him in the most defiant and joyful way he knew. This time, he said them as someone who had come back. The difference between those two utterances, the 2022 version and the 2026 version, is something that is almost impossible to communicate in words, but was immediately felt by every person in that stadium who remembered the last time. In 2022, "Welcome to my city" was the declaration of a person who was holding something tightly because he knew it was about to be placed in suspension. There was joy in it, enormous joy, but underneath the joy, there was something that the cameras caught if you looked carefully. The specific expression of someone who is saying a thing they need to say before circumstances prevent them from saying it for a long time. In 2026, the expression was entirely different. Fans who were watching closely, and in a stadium full of people who had traveled from around the world specifically to watch closely, there were many, described what they saw as something that does not have a simple name. It was not relief exactly, not triumph exactly, not simply happiness. It was the specific quality that exists in a person's face and body when they are returned to a place that is genuinely theirs after genuinely being away, and are standing in it with the full weight of everything that happened in between. This person had won Artist of the Year at the AMAs, had crossed 2.4 billion streams on Spotify, had been named Dior Global Ambassador and sat next to Anna Wintour at Paris Fashion Week, had had his name chanted in 150,000-person stadiums across 3 continents, had been called the most searched K-pop artist on Google for weeks at a time. And now he was standing on a stage in the city that knew him before any of that, saying 6 words, and 55,000 people were losing their voices. Here is the part of the story that the media coverage largely summarized but did not fully excavate. The reaction from the Busan crowd to "Welcome to my city" was not the generic stadium response of an audience acknowledging a familiar song introduction. It was something more specific and more personal than that. Korea Herald had reported before the concert that the residents of Busan, not just the fans who had traveled from outside the city, but the actual residents, felt a distinct local pride about Jimin and Jungkook being there. The official the paper interviewed said, "Many people in Busan feel a sense of pride because Jimin and Jungkook are from here," reflecting the sense that for many residents, BTS is not simply a global success story, it is also a local one. That sentiment was present in the stadium. There is a specific quality to the reaction of a crowd in which some significant portion of the people are not fans reacting to a performance they love, but residents responding to something that happened in their city, to someone who came from their streets on a stage that has now drawn 100,000 visitors from around the world to their home. The sound of those two things combined,
The fandom energy and the civic pride is not something that happens at most concerts. It is not something that can be manufactured by production design or set lists or lighting. It can only happen when the artist is genuinely from the place, genuinely came back, and genuinely means the words they are saying. And yet, that is still not the part of this moment that made the most people stop when they encountered the footage. The part that stopped people was what happened in Jimin's body after he said the words. Before he turned back toward the stage and the performance continued, there was a fraction of a second, less than 2 seconds by most estimates, in which he stood at the edge of the stage looking out at the crowd. Not performing, not posing, not transitioning, just standing there, looking. And in that fraction of a second, the expression on his face was not the expression of a performer who has just landed a crowd interaction. It was the expression of a person absorbing something, taking it in. The specific quality that appears in someone's face when they are aware that what they are experiencing is not ordinary and that they should not let it pass without fully feeling it. Fans who screen recorded the moment and paused it at exactly that point described what they saw in ways that varied in their specificity but converged on the same essential thing. That Jimin, for those less than 2 seconds, looked like a person standing exactly where they were supposed to be for the first time in a very long time. 4 years is a long time. It is a long time to be away from a stage. It is a long time to be separated from 6 people you have spent most of your adult life performing alongside. It is a long time to carry a city in your memory without standing in it in the particular way you stand in it when you are performing for the people who live there. Jimin spent those 4 years doing things that the world registered and celebrated. The solo debut, the Billboard Hot 100 #1, the Muse album released while he was in the military, the behind-the-scenes videos filmed before enlistment and released while he was unable to be present for the reaction, the discharge, the comeback, the tour, the AMAs, all of it real, all of it historic by any reasonable measure. And through all of it, Busan was still there, still the place his father's cafe stands, still the place the subway stations run, still the place that before any of it existed is where the person who became Jimin of BTS was just a kid who was very good at dancing and not yet certain where that would take him. When he said, "Welcome to my city" on June 12, 2026, he was not just welcoming 55,000 people to a concert in Busan. He was, in the specific and irreplaceable way that only 6 words in the right place at the right time can do it, completing something. Not ending, completing. There is a difference. An ending closes a chapter. A completion acknowledges that the chapter was always building toward exactly this. There is a question I want to leave you with. Jimin said those 6 words in this stadium in 2022 before everything stopped, and he said them again in 2026 after everything started again. The words were the same, the city was the same, the stadium was the same, the song was the same. But the person who said them after everything he experienced in the 4 years between those 2 moments was not exactly the same, could not have been. So what do you think was different about the way he said it this time? Was it in the voice? Was it in the body language? Was it in that fraction of a second at the edge of the stage where he just stood and looked? Or is it something harder to name than any of those things? Something that only comes through when you watch the 2 videos side by side and feel the difference that cannot quite be put into words, but that every person who was in that stadium on June 12th felt the moment those notes began to play. Write what you heard and saw in the comments. The most precise descriptions of Jimin always come from the people who have been listening the longest. Until the next one, take care of yourselves, and as always, Purple You.